So the Taliban leader's death came as good news to many. President Obama even say this is an important milestone. But there is also others saying this is only going to be a temporary disarray to the Taliban group. So let me start with this. How much of an impact is Mansour's death to the Taliban group's operation? Let me start with Mr. Teng here.
This was not the first report saying that Mansour was killed in the June attack. And several months ago also there was a news about his death, and this time even the President Obama confirmed the death of the Taliban leader. Of course, the killing of such a super a leader in Afghanistan will give some positive impact on the fighting against the terrorism in that country. But as we are approaching a peaceful solution, as we have witnessed in recent months, that the peaceful process also now has been under its process. So such a killing might be complicate the the process for the peaceful negotiation dialogue among parties concerned in that country.
Ambassador Volker, how do you see this transpire for a Taliban group? Is it going to complicate the peace process there in Afghanistan even more?
No, I don't think so. I think that the Taliban has not been seriously interested in peace with the government of Afghanistan to begin with. They've been attacking it, they've been demanding a change in government, a change in the constitution, they've been trying to seize and acquire territory. So I think it is important that there be some military success against the Taliban. That's going to be more likely to make them want to negotiate than what we've seen so far, which by winning on the battlefields has emboldened them and making them less willing to negotiate.
Dr. al-Rubaie, let me get your thoughts on this. Is this going to be a serious blow to Taliban or not necessarily so? Your thoughts on this?
I don't believe it's going to be a major blow. I think if we have managed over the last 2 decades to kill thousands of Mansours like jihadists, and there still we see continue to be mushrooming and continue to be like amoeba growth, if you like, wherever and all over the world. We need to tackle and address the real issue, the root cause. The root cause, the etiology is this Wahhabi version of Islam. This is a faith which is extremist, violent faith, all of manifesting itself, whether it's called the Taliban in Afghanistan or in Pakistan or in Yemen, Al-Qaeda, or in Boko Haram in Nigeria, or ISIS in Iraq and Syria. It is the same all over the world, whether it is 9/11 or it's Paris or it's the 7/7 of London. It is exactly the same ideology. This is an theocratic challenge. This is ideological challenge. And people, we can kill thousands and thousands of these jihadis all over the world. And we've been doing this, confining ourselves to only security measures or education or economy or political inclusion and so on and so forth. This is a comprehensive package. I agree with, and I don't disagree. But the real reason, the real underlying cause is not being addressed, is not being understood, and that's the ideological challenge.
There's no doubt that challenges still remain here. So moving on from this point, let's take a look at this possible succession showdown. I want to read this to our viewers and to all of you. So Mansour's death will likely spark another round of power struggles within Taliban, as did his predecessor Omar's death. The BBC actually listed several possible successors of Mansour that could lead the insurgent group. A faction within the Taliban would like Mullah Muhammad Yaqub, the eldest son of Taliban founder and spiritual head Mullah Omar, to take over. Other leading figures might favor Mullah Abdul Ghani Baradar, a founding member of the Taliban and Mullah Omar's former deputy, who has been held by Pakistan since 2010. and the Taliban's powerful commanders, including Abdul Qayyum Zakir and Sirajuddin Haqqani, one of Mullah Mansour's 2 deputies, will also be crucial in the selection process of the new leader. So, Mr. Teng, how do you see this going from forward? Who is likely going to be the next leader, and how is it going to shape the situation there?
It's really very difficult to have a prediction on the coming successor of the Taliban leaders. And actually, there are at least 3 battlefields for the power struggle in Afghanistan today. The first is the struggle between the Taliban troops and also the government troops supported by the Western countries, especially by the United States. And this is the battlefield. Another battlefield is the struggle between the Taliban and also the Al-Qaeda and ISIL. They already entered Afghanistan started from 2014. And the third battlefield is the power struggle in Taliban itself. And a lot of candidates might be the new leader of Taliban, but I don't think it's easy for Taliban to have a supreme leader at this moment. We have already witnessed the successor, from Omar to Mosul. It took at least 2 years. So suddenly, the leader Mosul took power and was killed, days ago.
And Master Volker, a possible power struggle, do you agree with this? Is the power vacuum going to spark a leadership crisis there?
I don't think that's quite the way I would describe it. When you say a power struggle, it sounds like internal fighting within the Taliban. I don't think that's the accurate portrayal. Instead, the Taliban has always been run as a council. There is a leader of the Taliban, but it's always been a collection of powerful figures that form a council, a shura. And that group is going to be meeting and selecting who the next leader would be. But it's going to be more of a consensus process, looking at a few possibilities and then coming together. I don't see this as any kind of contentious power struggle that could divide the Taliban.
Dr. al-Rubaie, your thoughts on this? The Taliban group has been divided. Some even say that with Mansour gone, the Taliban group may become even more divided, making peace talks and negotiations even more difficult.
I believe there is going to be a huge power struggle within Taliban, and between the, if you like, the very, very extremist and the extremist, there's going to be a compromise between the two, and that compromise leader who is going to emerge is going to be weak because he's a compromise leader of Taliban. And I believe he's going to be under the control of the Shura Council and cannot lead this terrorist organization anywhere forward. We were hoping to a process of reform from within Taliban so that a reformed Taliban organization can be partner to the Afghan government in future. But that hope, I think this is dashed, and I don't think this is on the table now. As far as the second battlefield, which was put quite nicely by your earlier guest, I believe it's highly unlikely there's going to be a closing of the gap between ISIL and Taliban, because ISIL is suffering considerable loss, if you like, losses all over in Syria and in Iraq. Today, the Iraqi security forces are making a huge winning, and they're going into Fallujah, which is the heartland of ISIL in Iraq, and with so easy effort. I mean, okay, we're putting a lot of sacrifices in there, but it's unexpectedly was easy to get into Fallujah, and the reason is because the morale of ISIL fighting are really low, and the morale of Iraqi security forces is sky high now. And with the Hashd al-Sha'bi, with the popular mobilization forces and the tribal fighters, they're winning, and they're going to get back Fallujah in no time.
Now we'll delve into Fallujah in just a bit. Just follow up on the situation, the matter on ISIS. Now Mullah Mansour has been publicly challenged the legitimacy of ISIS, and he has declared an all-out war towards ISIS, which fundamentally become quite instrumental in preventing the group's establishment in Afghanistan. Now with him dead, are we going to see ISIL maybe power rise in Afghanistan, Mr. Teng?
Yeah, I think the driving force for Taliban is ideology, and one principle insisted on by the Taliban actually is that no foreign country troops can, can be deployed in Afghanistan. Even the terrorist group from the Middle East cannot be used Afghanistan as a base for the extremist activities. So I think this is the basic principle for Taliban to go ahead. So in the future, even Mansour was killed, and Taliban will continue the momentum to maintain the country as one country without foreign troops.
Some also worry, Ambassador Volker, that fractions of Taliban may get close to ISIS. Is that possible?
It is. There are some extremists within the Taliban who are drawn to the even more extreme IS ideology. But I believe your previous guest speaking is correct when he says that a principal tenet for the Taliban is to keep foreigners out of Afghanistan. And they also believe that it was the foreign presence of Arab fighters and al-Qaeda in 2001 that drew the United States and others into Afghanistan. And they're concerned that it would renew that kind of foreign intervention from other powers too if ISIS is allowed to grow. And then finally, it would also, by presenting an even more extreme ideology, potentially challenge the legitimacy of the Taliban's own ideology. And so they're very sensitive about creating that dynamic as well.
Okay. Now on the interplay between Taliban and the Afghan government, Dr. al-Rubaie, with Mansour assassinated, where does the peace process stand now?
I think it's been thrown out of the window. It's a no-go area. The idea of negotiation between the government of Afghanistan and the Taliban. I think this is not on the table now, because they need to sort out their internal differences and come up with a leader of this terrorist organization, and also their position, because this is very important theocratically speaking. It's important, the new leader of Taliban, what is his position towards IS? What is his position towards Khalifa Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi? What is his position? Is he going to pay allegiance to this Khalifa, or he is going to ask the Khalifa Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi to pay allegiance to the new leader? This is it is extremely important, theocratical, as well as it's a religious issue. It's an ideological issue, need to be addressed between the two terrorist organizations. But as far as the negotiation and between Taliban and the government of Afghanistan, I think this is not going to happen in the near future, unless and until the Taliban has to go through a reform process, and that part of reformed Taliban could be, theoretically speaking, could be part of the future political process in Afghanistan.
Ambassador Volker, earlier I see you nodding your head. You agree with what al-Rubaie said there? The peace talk has been temporarily thrown out of the table.
I do agree with that. In the first instance, as I said, I don't believe the Taliban was genuinely interested in a peace process to begin with. And now on top of that, you no longer have a figure who can represent the Taliban effectively at this point. So there's really nothing I think is going to happen in a peace process at this time.
Okay, lastly, I want to pivot to an ongoing situation, the operation to retake Fallujah from ISIS that's happening in Iraq right now. Mr. Teng, how do you see this? How likely is this going to be a successful operation? How long is it going to take?
It's really hard to predict the time. How can they succeed in such a takeover of Fallujah? Actually, I think since the September last year, when Russia involved in the anti-terrorist attack operation in the Middle East, the situation there, especially the fighting against ISIS, has been completely changed, and the anti-terrorist operation actually did give some very positive progress in this regard, and I'm sure the situation will be better and better in the coming month, in the coming days. And the key issue is that how can all the parties concerned to have a good cooperation against the terrorist groups in the Middle East.
Dr. al-Rubaie, how do you see things turn out for Fallujah? I mean, they tried for Mosul, but it's not happening in Mosul, not happening for Ramadi. Is it going to happen for Fallujah this time?
I think because the popular mobilization forces and tribal fighters, along with the Iraqi security forces, are all jointly, with the help of the international alliance from air, this is going to happen, and it's happening as we speak. Fallujah is being liberated as we speak now. There are I should say, more than quarter of the city itself now under the control of the Iraqi security forces. The nature of the fight in Fallujah is different now. The Iraqi security forces has adopted a new tactic. They flood the area so that to deactivate all mines and all booby traps in front of them. So that is it. And they're coming from three different axes from the south and from the west and from the north, and they are making a very good progress because they're not using a traditional war methods. They're using a guerrilla style war. This is the same way we have used in Tikrit, whereby we kept most of the city intact, and now but unfortunately, the popular mobilization forces were not allowed to go into Ramadi, and that's why we ended up with 80% of the city is destroyed now of Ramadi. Now we are going to hope to keep the Fallujah intact, and we will. I think the Iraqi security forces, and there is a jubilation all over Baghdad now of the victories the Iraqi security forces and the popular mobilization forces, as well as with the tribal fighters, are making on the ground in Fallujah.
You seem quite optimistic about this operation. Ambassador Volker, last 40 seconds, your remarks on the situation there in Fallujah.
One thing we've seen the IS do before is hold territory, and then when confronted with overwhelming force, when there's much greater force coming at them, put up the booby traps and put up a token fight while withdrawing, and then attack somewhere else. IS is much better when they're attacking a lightly defended area and gaining territory that way. So I think this may be right, that Fallujah will go quickly, and the IS will live to fight another day.